Good morning. This is our third Dharma talk with video. On the other previous ones, I was reading and I think it was a little distracting, and so today I hope to speak right into our camera. It's difficult for me, and that's why I was reading, because I usually talk to people in the Sangha. Now I'm actually just speaking to my iPhone, which is clamped to a ladder in my dining room. So it's a little difficult, but I'll imagine that I'm talking to people out there. I hope everyone is well, and yet, this is not true for everyone, because we have a pandemic, the COVID-19 virus. And so when I say that, it's not possible that everyone could be well, and this is my topic for today. Again, interdependence, and also the seriousness of this COVID-19, in that there's a huge potential for death. This pandemic really represents our basic life. This is an opportunity to wake up to true and real life. The 2 points of interdependence and death comes up in something that I've been doing for many years called Vision Quest. But before that, I want to check with everyone and hope that everyone is paying attention and following the directive of our Governor Newsom, in that staying at home is very critical. At this point, there seems to be over 30,000 infected people in California and over 800 deaths. This is serious, and this is why I would also like to include a topic on death today. Not a very pleasant subject, but something that I think we need to have a discussion about. We talked in the past about Indra's net, and many things that the Buddha taught was very, very good. And yet, sometimes in our busy everyday life, we don't have time to think about these. But now, we're trying to make Indra's net a reality. And this is a net that has a knot at each corner, at each place. And at each place which represents a person, there's a jewel. And that jewel reflects all other people. The essence of nature is that it represents the interconnectedness of all people. And so when one part of the net moves, it all moves. And I explained that this was one of the reasons why this virus has spread so quickly, and that we are all connected throughout the world, and this is why this is a pandemic. Now, also, we can make this work in our favor, in that with our Sangha, we're trying to make this a real interconnection, especially for those people who may be living alone and those who may not use computers. And so we've set up a network where all of our members are connected, either through their organizations or if they don't belong to an organization, by having a phone number and person that they could call on. So if there are others who may need this connection, please notify the office or myself so that we're sure that everyone is part of our Indra's net. Now, how can Buddhism help us in this pandemic? We are perhaps unlike other religions in trying to bend reality. What Buddhism is about is waking up to reality, waking up to true and real life, which includes death. And these two things are something that I've dealt with over my life, and so I think I'll use that description to explain some of the things that the Buddha talked about. I've done many vision quests, and a vision quest is something where for many nature-based peoples, young people would go out. And in essence, they were looking to see who they would be as adults. And so they would, what is called call for a name. This would be going out into the wilderness for 2 to 4 days and fasting. That's no food and very little shelter. In the vision quests I've done, we've gone fasting for at least 4 days. We could bring water, but no tent, only a tarp. And the idea was to bring ourselves out into the elements. And the one thing that came out of this was, in a sense, surprising. It was not a survival mechanism. It was a journey inside, to be alone in nature. One of the safety features we had was to have a rock pile. We would go out with a partner off into one direction. And since we were isolated, we would have a central point. and arrange a set of rocks, one person in the morning, the other person in the evening. And by doing so, we would know whether that person was still all right. So there was at least a 24-hour safety net if the rock arrangement was not moved. On about the third day, I went out to my rock pile, and on the way back, I was able to get to a place where I could see our camp far in the distance, where our guides were located. And I was so happy to see a human being. This real urge, this need to see another human being was overwhelming. And this brings me to the story about our high school graduates in San Jose, where I ran a program for over 10 years. Having our high school graduates take part in this. We usually had about 15 people graduating each summer. But out of that, there were about 4 or 5 or 6 who wanted to do this vision quest. And I based it under the format that the Buddha took, leaving his home looking for truth. And with this, these high school seniors were going to leave high school and move on to college or jobs or go off into the world. And so this was an opportunity for them to actually look at the death of their child, their childhood, and see who they might be as adults. As you might imagine, the top concern of these teenagers was not eating, fasting for 2 or 3 days. And with this concern, we seem to have the most questions about, going without food. Again, the irony was that when they would go out, that was their major concern. But when they returned and shared their stories, do you know what their major concern was? The fact that they missed their family, people. So again, it was relationships that was paramount. So we as humans had this need to be with other humans. And this is where the image of the Buddha, accepting everyone just as they are, this whole thought of interdependence, is really a basic need of humans. And as Buddhists, this is one of our paramount truths that we have. Many years ago, I did, as a high school student, I remember being in a discussion with ministers and them talking about the spirituality of things. And at that time, I asked, you're talking about these spiritual things, but I always thought that survival was the most important. That as humans, the most basic thing for us is to survive, to be an individual, and to make sure that we survive individually. And the minister replied, no, it wasn't. That was not the most basic concern. What was basic to humans was something a little more noble. And what he pointed out was that there is a spiritual dimension that we as adults, as humans, aspire to. For an example, soldiers go into battle. They are concerned with their individual life, but they're doing it for others, for their country. And as parents, we all know that parents sacrifice for their children. So it's not the thought of survival of the individual, but it's for others. And again, this is the thought of us Buddhists, as we put the we into the we. And so this is an issue I'd like to talk about in the sense of death. And the reason I bring this up, because there is a real threat of death, and this is why it's so important for us to follow the directives, to stay away from others, to stay home, watch how we interact if we have to go shopping, cleaning, things that we bring in, and so forth. Now, American life is very busy, and we seem to neglect these very basic things that the Buddha talked about: sickness, old age, death. And yet, these are the things that are facing us today with this pandemic. There are over 8,000 in America who have already died. And this this increase of infection and deaths are said to increase in the next few weeks. And so how do we deal with this? For us, it is that life is precious. We know this with each of our memorial services. This being the first Sunday in April, we would normally have our Shotsuki, where we read the name of all those who passed away in April. Also, we have our obon, where we recognize people who passed away, who were instrumental in our lives. And so that is a natural part of a Shin Buddhist family. Not that death is so important, but this is, again, an experience, when we can experience the vitality of life. Now, in our isolation right now, staying home, we seem to be separate from each other. And yet, there is another side, that in this modern age, we're able to use computers, cell phones, FaceTime, things where we can connect with each other, even if we are physically separate. This was not possible years ago. And so we are connected, even with those miles and miles away in different parts of the world. And so this thought of connection is what I want to emphasize with life and death. Those who have gone on and who have passed, we recognize and remember with each memorial service, each obon, each shotsuki. And it's not that we emphasize death, it is that we are acknowledging and appreciating the efforts of others, for their efforts have made our lives possible. And by saying the Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu, we express our deep gratitude, knowing that their efforts have been for our benefit. So although we are concerned with our own life and our own efforts of our future, as Shin Buddhists, we can look at this moment now, this point, and with the Nembutsu, respond by expressing gratitude for what we have. For even with this pandemic, we stay connected, even electronically or through telephone and other means. And so in life, we can be connected, and in death, we can also stay connected with our memories. And Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu, brings that connection back to us in real life. And so I'll end this talk for now. I did talk about meditation in our Wednesday evening program. I'll talk more about that. And again, meditation, I'm saying, is what Shinran would consider a shallow practice, a practice that benefits the self, and as contrasted to deep practice, where meditation might be a means to awakening. For us Buddhists, it is, for us Shin Buddhists, it is not. Deep practice is Nembutsu, realizing that it is the efforts of others that we have been receiving. So this practice of meditation that we may be doing would be a practice of gratitude, recalling all the things that others have done for us. I'll repeat more of this as we get into our Buddhism 1, 2, 3, as we get into meditation and chanting and other rituals that are important to us. For these auxiliary practices are means for us to really make our way to awaken to the deep practice of the Nembutsu. So with that, I'll close with reciting the Nembutsu. Thank you, and please follow the directives in staying home, the importance of being connected with each other, either by phone, computer, or whatever means, without being physically connected. Thank you. Gassho, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu.